I've seen a figure, something on the order of 42% of the cost of building a unit is now in response to a regulatory requirement. So obviously that's pushing up costs, which, eventually pushes up rents and valuations. So even, New York State just passed new good cause eviction law, which is requiring all kinds of notices and changes. So the regulatory environment seems to be changing things faster, and you really are at peril if you're not paying attention to that type of thing. If you're not following the laws, you're being held to a higher standard. 20, 30 years ago, it was tenants and toilets. And, here's an apartment. If you like it, great. If you don't, there's somebody else. And we spent a lot of time processing things and, shuffling paper.
When we were looking at lease renewals, because we found that one of their managers 6 months ago was sending out lease renewal offers. Obviously, they were sending, dozens or hundreds of them, but a couple of them, the rent was going down upon renewal. And it turned out the company was pushing occupancy so hard that they didn't notice when the manager was lowering the rent upon renewal to keep the place occupied. And we were like, dude, this is your data. We're just showing it back to you. It was right here the whole time. And it's like, well, it was lost. There's such a big pile of data. How do you find the needle in the haystack, right? So that's what Property Gauge does. It just picks out the actionable items and says, here's the problem. Go.
Here's where to focus.
Go.
And we talked to some colleagues who were in the software industry who said they really, one was a small angel investor, and he said, I think you really got something here, and added in some tech guys who actually knew the tech side of the world. And
software.
Here we are. In times of distress, probably the best thing you can do is to maintain your standards, or as close to your standards as possible. Because putting somebody in an apartment they can't afford is no help to you, and it's no help to them. They're just going to struggle. They're just going to end up in an eviction or piling on the debt, and nobody got helped and nobody won. We would rather see somebody come to us and say, hey, I can't afford my apartment, and let them out of the lease and let them find someplace that's financially right sized for them, than to try and hold them in a lease and spend all kinds of fees on, legal fees and all that type of stuff. So in order to be able to do that, you have to have all the other pieces working properly. So do you have a good marketing program? Are you targeting the right people? Are you doing the right outreach efforts? Are you delivering the proper customer service? Are you showing them value for what they're buying? Yes, there's always people who are just, they're over their head, but typically, that's not somebody who's first moving into an apartment. If you rent to somebody who's only got 2 times the income and a car payment, they're not going to be okay. There's just too many things happen. Life happens.
So we did one of our sites a couple of years ago. We changed out all of the incandescent hallway light fixtures to LED. And there was basically a rebate program through our local utility, National Grid, and they covered almost like 80% of the cost and did all the work to do that for us, which was fantastic because it was like overdue that it was time to switch out these older light fixtures. And doing so reduced our electric bill pretty significantly. Over the course of a year, it was easily $20,000, $30,000 less just for the one property, just for the house accounts. And all of those kinds of programs, whether it be low flow shower heads or water heaters or pipe wraps or LED lighting upgrades or even EV charging, there's incentives out there. There's federal incentives, there's state incentives, there's lots of it out there. So absolutely it's the right thing to do, but there's the environment, but also for the bottom line. And if you look at today's renter, it's mostly millennial, Gen Z, and soon enough Gen Y. And those people are very concerned about the environment. 1 in 5 new cars sold is an electric vehicle. So if you have 5, 6 apartment communities to choose from as a renter, and you have an electric vehicle, and only one of those communities has an EV charger, the choice is pretty clear, right? I can just charge right at home. It's not an inconvenience to my life. And, so anything that you can do to be a differentiator to try to grab a specific niche or a market share, do it. Absolutely.
In 2011, Hurricane Irene hit upstate New York, and we had a 192 unit apartment complex that was evacuated for 3 days. and 4 buildings, 32 units that were literally underwater, about 2-3 feet of water. So for 3 days, nobody could get into their apartments. We had to deal with all that. And we had a huge checklist and a huge, what are we going to do? And how do we approach this? One of those calls was to some of my iRoom network. Hey, is there anything I missed? And one person came up with, order dumpsters. Like, what do we need dumpsters for? I said, don't worry, you're going to need them. Get as many 40-yard roll-offs as you can get, because after 3 days, every single apartment is going to have to dump all the food in their refrigerator. And those 32 units that are underwater, everything's going in the garbage. So we were the first call, and we got like 8 dumpsters on site. And literally 2 weeks later, with all this chaos going on, we had people coming to rent apartments, not even realizing that we had flooded, and thought that we were just in the middle of a renovation.